Hi, I'm Beekeeping Made Simple, and this video is about the crush and strain method, and I'm going to show you how I crush and strain honeycomb. I actually do it a lot when I'm harvesting because I primarily sell comb honey. In my first few years, I kept top bar hives as a beekeeper, and so then if you have a top bar hives, you have to do the crush and strain method because you can't put those top bar frames into an extractor. The crush and strain method isn't that bad. I mean, it's cheap. If you have to buy supplies for it, you know, you're looking at a strainer and you probably have a fork. You want a decent size container that has a flat bottom. It doesn't have to be this one. This one I got from a restaurant supply store. It was pretty cheap, but I also have one that you'll see in the video that was a Tupperware container. And ideally you would have a bucket with a gate on it. Now I have a link to my Amazon affiliate program if you want to see the ones on Amazon that I recommend. But now those you're looking at like about $50. You can buy a food grade bucket. It doesn't even have to be 5 gallons. It depends on how much honey you're harvesting. A food grade bucket, they sell them at Lowe's. So if you have one locally that you can find, you can just buy the gate for about $20 and screw a hole in the bucket. Ideally you'd find a food grade bucket that's, you know, the square shaped buckets as opposed to the round ones. I've never tried to do it. I don't know how tricky and messy it gets, but you can try it if you like. I am all for making your own equipment instead of just buying everything and paying top dollar for it. So really cheap to get started. These are things that you might even have a use for otherwise in your home, and it's just very easy to store. So I highly recommend it if you are in your first or second year beekeeping. If you have only 1 or 2 hives, then your first year you might not even harvest any honey, and you might not even like it. You might not even want to do it again next year. So it'd be best to just have this equipment that you get as needed when you need it, as opposed to buying this $400 extractor that you are then going to have to try to sell later on down the road. Very, very important, before you do anything, after you're done cleaning everything, make sure this is closed and tight all the way. I've heard stories of people forgetting and then honey come flooding out the bucket and onto the floor. I like to wash my equipment the day before and leave it out to air dry because water is honey's worst enemy and can cause your honey to ferment. So you really want to make sure that everything is totally dry. Crush and strain method isn't for people that have more than 3 or 4 hives, are bringing in lots of honey. It's not ideal for people with foundation. You can do it with foundation, but it's a lot easier and faster if you do not use foundation. And the darker the comb, the harder it is to crush. This video is part of the videos I have in my honey harvesting chapter in my online beekeeping class. So if you find this video helpful and like the setup of it, then you should check out beekeepingmadesimple.com, where I have my full online class, Beekeeping for Beginners, and I explain all the parts to beekeeping from start to finish. How it works is you're going to take your frame of honey, and you're going to crush and strain. It's really as simple as that. But I'm going to give you a few tricks so that you don't make a ginormous mess. First of all, did you use foundation in your frames? If you say no, you can skip through this next part that I'm going to talk about. All you're going to do is cut the honeycomb out. If you did use foundation, then you're going to need to cut through it or squish the honeycomb out. So if you did use foundation, you really should use an extractor. That's going to be the easiest way to get the honey out. And if you are going to use a crush and strain method, don't use foundation to make your life a whole lot easier, or use beeswax foundation. The plastic foundation is going to take longer, but if you do have foundation, all you're going to do is take your honeycomb frame and put it in a flat container that has at least 3 inches of depth. You're going to take your fork and you are just going to squish and pop open all of these cells. If you have this plastic sheet inside, you're going to eventually hit the plastic foundation with your fork, and you're just going to scrape all of the honeycomb and beeswax off of the foundation. If you do not use foundation, all you have to do is take your knife, a bread knife works best, and you are going to cut the honeycomb out of the frame. And you're going to cut down the length and the width of the frame to get all the honeycomb out. Obviously, the larger the dish you have, the easier this is going to be. This I just got at a Target or Walmart, and it was just a large Tupperware container. It came with a lid. It was kind of like a carrying case. It didn't have a sealing lid, which was fine for me because all I was looking for was this bottom part and I didn't care about the lid. Once you get most of the honeycomb out, you can go back with your knife and get the little bits that are along the edges. If you use foundation and you're finding that squeezing the honeycomb out with the foundation is a pain, it's really not that bad, but an alternative is to find a local beekeeping association. The one that I belong to in Philadelphia, the members owned an extractor and they had extracting days, and everyone would bring their honey and they would take turns using the extractor. So once your honeycomb is in the container, you're going to do is cut it up into chunks. And that's just to make it easier for you to squish. The darker the wax is when harvesting honey, the tougher it's going to be to squish. So this is going to be a lot harder than the very light colored beeswax. Once you've cut it up into chunks, then you just take your fork and you squish it. Once you're done crushing all the honeycomb from that frame, you're going to take it and you're going to pour it into your strainer. You're going to let the honey drip out of the strainer into your bucket. And you want to leave it for a good 4 to 6 hours, but ideally overnight, to let as much honey as possible drip down. And if you don't want to use a bucket with the strainer, or you don't want to buy the bucket with the gate, you can use a tall pot, and this bucket strainer will fit on top of like one of those large soup pots. But it's really hard to pour out of those things, and it's really hard. You can pour it into a jar, usually okay, but it's the dripping afterwards that can make a really big mess. So these guys are about $20 and I highly recommend them. Just make sure that this gate is closed tight before you put any kind of honey inside it. And you want to put a towel or some kind of cover over the top, especially if it's going to sit overnight. And if you live in a warm climate place like we do, where there's lots of critters and geckos and things that love honey. The final step to harvesting liquid honey is pouring it into your jars. First, I recommend taking a plate or a pan or something and putting it directly under your spout, gate, but on the floor to catch all the little drops. Next, make sure you have a damp rag on you so that you can just wipe up any little spills and to keep all of your jars and your hands from getting super sticky. I have my jars open over here and I have my lids over on the other side. make sure before you put the honey in this bucket that this gate is closed and locked. Now that you're ready to put honey in your jars, what you're going to do is unscrew just to the point that you can pick the gate up. There should be a little bit of resistance still. Pull the gate up so that honey pours out. Once your jar is full, put it on the side and fill up your next jar. And usually if you give it a good little swoop, your honey won't drip on the jar. It helps to elevate your honey bucket on boxes so that you don't have to hunch over too much to fill up your jars. Pick up on the gate and push against the rest of the gate so that honey doesn't ooze up on the top. If you don't push up on the gate and you just pick it up, but you don't push it this way towards the bucket, it could get to be a big mess like this. Thanks for watching. I hope your crush and straining of honeycomb goes well and your honey is delicious and you have fun doing it.